When were you the bad guy in someone else's life story? Lol. Probably every day that I wake my kids up and put them on the school bus. I went to a show by some emo cover band. I ended up at the front by the stage. Danced with this pretty cute girl who popped up next to me. After a while I decide to ask for her number. I give her my phone, and as this happens a guy comes from the crowd with a drink for her. I find out shortly after that he invited her to this show. But she didn't realize it was meant as a date. She takes the drink, then gives me her number right in front of the guy, pretty much ignoring him. And in that moment I am become Chad, destroyer of beaters. We go somewhere quieter in the venue and flirt for a bit. I feel bad for the dude having been in that situation before, and tell her she should clarify that she's not interested. They go off and have an uncomfortable conversation, which is probably for the best, as she said she was never going to be into him. But yeah, he probably sees me as the bad guy and I don't blame him. Probably when I broke up with my girlfriend that I started dating in high school. We had made some plans about me going into the military or joining the police force so I could provide for us once we got married. Then I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do any of that. I'm 19 inches and I left. She was pregnant by another man less than a year later. I saw an open spot at a very crowded bar and thought, sweet. I went to go order, and right when I got the bartender's attention I heard, "Excuse me." I looked down and I was leaning over the head of a guy in a wheelchair. Hence the open space at the bar. Drunk me didn't put it together and said, "Hey, what's up?" then put my order in. When I sobered I realized what a horrible thing I'd done. My heart is pounding typing this up. A year ago today I was interviewing for a job. I was in the lobby making small talk with the receptionist. It was her birthday and also happened to be my friend's birthday. She told me what she was doing for her day. I don't remember exactly, but her BF was taking her to dinner. I piped in with, "My friend's husband is taking her to the beach for the weekend." Huge mistake. I immediately noticed a change in her posture. She hated me instantly. She has hated me ever since. I have always been nice to her, and have no idea how to change the situation. Wish I could. I get that I was an unintentional one-upper at that moment. Hell, I've always even been avoiding anything that might seem braggadocios around her. TLDR, I was the devil for a day. 1 year ago today. Been paying for it since. I was going on a date after a big rain. As we were driving, I didn't notice a pretty big puddle and drove through it kind of fast. It created a huge tidal wave that hit all the people standing at a bus stop. Local politician reneged on a promise he made me. I got mad, so I started plotting to throw him off the board he was on. It took me about a year, but I successfully isolated him and removed him from power. He didn't even see it coming. He was too busy laying the groundwork for run for mayor. It's been 4 years and he still won't look at me in the supermarket. It happened in 5th grade and it still makes me feel bad. I had become rather popular in school. I had a group of friends and most of the other boys wanted to be in our circle. There was this other kid named Trevor. He kept trying to be friends with us and hang around with us. He wasn't that bad, but he just didn't know how to react to things. He always was over the top or super talkative when something happened. I finally got tired of him and said something along the lines of, "Hey, Dart, no one wants you around." It was during some event and most of the grade heard it and he pretty much got shunned. We ended up moving an hour away for my dad's work before the end of the year. I still feel terrible about it. I never really found out what happened to him. I am not sure if I made him an outcast for more than that year, but I did at least make him an outcast for a few months. I just didn't want him bothering us, but I took it too far. I was a bad guy that day. I've gone out of my way several times since then to try to make up for it, even if it doesn't have a huge impact. I am sorry, Trevor. As a retail wage slave, I used my technopathic powers to prevent a mother from buying expensive Christmas presents for her kids by repeatedly making her card decline. As the Christmas ruinator, I have decided to embark on a quest for world domination and may soon be in your city spreading Christmas sadness. I once contributed nothing to a group project : I still feel really bad. Everyone should get to do it once in their life. Doesn't mean you shouldn't feel like a human dumpster. But it's not like you're that guy that told some kid the entire school didn't like him and got him outcast on the spot. Every time you bring it up, you only make it worse for Trevor. I reported a former friend to social services for neglecting her toddler. I knew she was having a hard time. She was a single teen mother. But she shouted at her son a lot. However, alarm bells really started ringing after I turned up at her place one morning. The kid was wandering about alone in a room full of broken booze bottles, rotten food, overfilling ashtrays, dozens of filled diapers. She was nowhere to be seen. And it later became apparent that she was in her bedroom with some random guy. The kid was filthy and his diaper was falling off of him, it was so full. So I went to change him and he was red raw. Even though she knew I was there, she didn't appear. So I cleaned the room to make it safe and played with him until she finally got up. Then I took my leave and got straight in contact with the right people. I later found out the kid was placed with his father and grandmother. I probably really messed up her life, but I have no regrets. Breaking up with my girlfriend 2 weeks ago. I know I'm the bad guy and probably always will be in her eyes and in the eyes of her family and friends, but no matter how many ways I slice it, I know I did the right thing for both of us. My then best friend told me he fancied this girl at a party when we were like 15. She started coming on to me and we ended up getting together, much to the despair of my then best friend. Terrible move on my part. In a way, fast forward 12 years and I'm engaged to aforementioned girl, and my then best friend got pneumonia whilst traveling in Norway and he died alone. I made up that last part. We are still best friends. I was best man at his wedding last year and sometimes we 69. I made up the last part of that last part. Back when I was 20, almost 2 decades ago, I started fooling around with a girl who'd been my friend for a few years. We started hanging out a ton and sleeping together for a brief period. Eventually she confessed feelings for me and I told her that they weren't reciprocated. I tried to be gentle, but in retrospect, I was a big dig about it, and that I wasn't interested in a relationship. She ended up transferring schools and moving across the country. We didn't speak much after that and I quickly moved on with my life and essentially forgot about her. A dozen years later we reconnect on social media and after chatting for a bit I discovered that I had essentially wrecked her. She had been in love with me and had figured I was the one. My rejection sent her into a tailspin and she'd transferred schools because her grades had dropped off a cliff once I shot her down. I apparently ruined certain foods and songs for her for years as they were things she associated with me, things which I sadly don't even recall. Even her new friends knew about and loathed me sight unseen. I was the fabled Minotaur 11 who had broken her and who all subsequent men were compared against. Eventually she got over it and is now happily married with a family. But it really shocked me to think I'd basically been a wrecking ball that had smashed through her life and it had taken her a good 5 to 7 years to put the pieces back together. Especially when, at the time, I was just a stupid young guy having fun and hardly remembered what we did together once she left. Edit, an errand comma. I once broke my friend's neck playing recess football. It was a complete accident and I felt horrible. But that didn't help him not have to wear a neck brace and sleep in an upright position for 2 months. That's how I remember it anyway. It was a long time ago. When I pursued my ex who had a girlfriend because he led me to believe that he was breaking up with her and was sexting me. He ended up not breaking up with her. And when word got out about me and him, he told everyone that I was crazy and obsessed with him and trying to sabotage his relationship, making no mention of the fact that he was the one who was trying to sext me. So I guess I'm the crazy ex-girlfriend in his narrative. And his current girlfriends. One of my friends who I had pined after 4 months finally agreed to go out with me and we actually dated for a while. Broke up with him because it turned out he had no ambition or sense of urgency to do anything with his life. I sort of distanced myself from our friend group. But a year later we reconnect and go out again. Thought he was getting his life together. But turns out I was wrong, so I broke up with him again. He's pretty guarded and doesn't let people in a lot. So I've always felt pretty ducking terrible for dumping him not once but twice. I imagine I'm sort of his nightmare. Although we went to different universities, I had the same best friend from high school. He was the opposite sex and had a thing for me since about 8th grade, but I never reciprocated. I may have unintentionally lead him on for a while, but when he bluntly asked, I bluntly said no. Friendship moves on. I had become really close friends with a girl at my uni and introduced the two of them. They got together and everyone was happy. I moved into a house with the girl. They continued dating. My selfishness and poor attitude towards their relationship strained both friendships. Although, to be fair, she wasn't being as kind to me as she could have, and of course as her boyfriend he took her side. I wanted all of my friendships to stay the same, with me being the center of attention, and they wanted their romantic relationship to blossom. They eventually move in together and I saw less and less of them. I chalked it up to her being jealous that he used to be into me and that she was afraid he'd leave her for me because I am more attractive. In reality, I was being a selfish stuck-up bitch who put myself first and didn't pull my own head out of my ass to see I wasn't putting forth any effort in keeping the friendships alive. They got married and I was thankfully invited but never saw or heard from them again. I have done a lot of growing up and maturing and would love the chance to apologize and make amends. Alas, this won't happen, and I am sad to say I ruined two of my most cherished friendships because I was being stuck up and self-involved. We hired a guy for my department at work. Turns out he has no driver's license and has to ride his bike to and from work every day. In the summer this was no big deal, but not so much when winter comes. Then he moved to a new apartment farther away and out past where I lived. I gave him a ride home every once in a while but told him that he needed to get his license back because I would not get up earlier to drive away from work to pick him up. Winter came and he was still riding his bike and asked me for a ride in the morning. Suddenly I was the bad guy for telling him no. My favorite is this guy in college. He would slack off on every project until the afternoon before it was due and then come to my group of friends expecting us to show him everything we did. We were in a computer science course. One day I was the only one around. We had 3 projects due the next day and I was busy with the last one still. He came expecting me to help him and tell him everything I did. I didn't have time to help him and told him this and that he should have started earlier, as we all had been warning him to do for the last 2 weeks, as these were not simple projects. He ended up failing those 3 courses and talks to everyone in the group still minus me. Apparently he hates and blames me. I don't really care, as people like him have a garbage attitude regarding the world and don't see they are the issue. Either way, I think it's funny and still laugh about it with those friends whenever he comes up. Made a new group of friends. Starting getting friendly with one guy in particular. He'd been seeing a girl casually in the group for a couple months. But they weren't in an official relationship. He and I hit it off and he broke it off with her so we could date. We dated for 6 months before calling it quits. A while after this, I meet the girl's brother. We hit it off and dated for a year. Her brother had recently moved back to town after being away 4 years. And I ended up taking a lot of his time and attention away from her, just as a natural part of having a relationship. Wherever she turned, I was just this force sucking things away from her. I went to my friend's wedding. Some context, I had moved away from my 2 best friends to be with a guy and live in Los Angeles. I also was running from my problems of alcoholism. I was an undiagnosed bipolar. My relationship with the guy ended abruptly and I had to fly home to the East Coast 2 days before her wedding. Basically, long story short, I showed up trashed and mentally unstable to her wedding. I didn't interrupt her ceremony. But when cocktail hour came, I went full out crazy. I locked myself in the country club bathroom and was sobbing and screaming. I refuses to come out. They broke down the door and about 4 guys had to drag me out. I'm a pretty small gay guy. I'm still in recovery. I'm on medication. But neither of my only two best friends want me in their life. Even after I apologized. I understand them. But it still hurts. Some guy who was in love with one of my exes. He was the typical nice guy, I'm just her friend. Met her while he was there with her at a party. We hit it off and dated for like 4 months. I broke it off as I told her I didn't want anyone that was thinking of even getting married. She ended up with some piece of shit ex, and he, the best friend, called me that I ruined his life, that he was so close to getting with her but her lust for me ruined that. I told him to meet me for dinner and tried to explain the friend zone. He brushed me off. Saw her years later. I asked about him just cause I am a nosy rat. Said he finally convinced her to give him a shot. And 2 months after dating he proposed to her. She said no and he went stalker. Last year I backed out of my childhood friend's wedding. I was mobbed because she was expecting her bridal party to spend a small fortune on her elopement. With us buying our own dresses, jewelry, paying our way to where she was getting married, 8-hour drive for us because flying would have been double the price. Splitting the cost of the lodge she wanted us all to stay at. Going out for a wedding brunch after the ceremony. And going to a spa the day before the wedding. I was looking at spending easily $2,000 USD. I tried to rationalize with her after she brought up brunch and the spa. I told her we were going to be in this gorgeous lodge with a giant kitchen, so I offered the idea of us cooking for the newlyweds so it would be a more intimate and special meal post-wedding. She straight up turned Bridezilla. Said most of the people going, i.e. just the bridesmaids and groomsmen, weren't adventurous eaters. Why go out to eat then when you don't know the restaurant menu? And she's the bride. So we're doing this. Nope the duck out of that, and she hasn't spoken to me since, and I'm sure I'm the asshole in her story, but whatever. Saved a shit ton of money. Disclaimer, I totally admit to being the bad guy here, and in hindsight I deeply regret my actions. I have a horrible temper and I'm very spiteful. This was 10+ years ago and I've mellowed out a lot since. Anyway, moving forward. I was dating a girl that was taking a criminal justice class at college as part of her degree program. She was a senior. She came to me and told me the assignment was too dark and it freaked her out, and she asked me to basically do it for her. The assignment was to develop your own serial killer and write his story from birth to what made him a serial killer. Ultimately explaining if he got caught, got away, died, etc. I wrote it and had a good time. She got a strong grade on the paper. I liked the story quite a bit, so I published it on an amateur writer's website I'm a member of, where I have a few other short stories I've written. A month later, give or take, we broke up. She was batshit crazy and caused all kinds of drama for me, and even tried to ruin some of my friendships by spreading lies and being malicious. So I wrote an email anonymously to her professor explaining that she had stolen her assignment from an amateur short story writer. I linked him to the story on the website with the copyright and everything posted. She got called in. Underwent a beating with the dean. Ultimately she was kicked out of her degree program, as I remember correctly. I may have overreacted a bit. Late in high school I started dating a girl very shortly after she had broken up with another guy. Towards the end of our relationship, she started emotionally cheating on me with her ex, talking to him all the time, telling him she was still in love with etc. She dumped me for him about 15 months after we started dating. I'm pretty sure I was the bad guy in the other dude's mind. This is pretty minor in the grand scheme of things, but I feel so bad about it. On Monday night I was checking into a hotel and the guy at the check-in desk asked if I knew the final score of the national championship game, NCAA March Madness, Villanova, Michigan. I said I don't know, but that Nova won by 15 or so. He goes, I don't care about that. I just want to know if they hit the 146 over. I said, quite confidently, oh yeah man. For sure. You're good. The guy looked very happy, implying he had a decent chunk of change on this. Turns out the total was 141. I sent a Christmas card to a guy who had a crush on me when we were in high school together. When I sent the card I was still in school and he was in the Marines, stationed somewhere near the Mexican border. I hadn't heard from him in a while and just wanted him to know that I still thought about him and I wished him well. Turns out he was in a pretty intense relationship with a woman out there who had found some letters and notes and whatnot of mine that he had kept, and she was pissed about it. He had to explain that nothing really happened between us. He was with her now. He had no feelings for me anymore, etc. And she accepted it. So here comes my Christmas card a few months later, and she was not happy, to say the least. I wasn't exactly sure why she thought some 15-year-old girl who lived almost 3,000 miles away was a serious threat to her relationship. But apparently she hated my guts. I was the homewrecker that was going to take her man away, and I didn't even know she existed. I have no idea if they're still together. He got in contact with me after the Christmas card episode just to let me know why he had gone radio silence for so long. The last thing I heard, they were trying to get pregnant. That was probably 20 years ago. I recently tried to find him on FB and it looks like he's married with kids. I did not try to friend him. In Mexico, I was on the beach and see a bull come flying at me. I thought I saw one of the kids in the ocean yelling at me to kick it back. I blasted that bull way into the ocean, overshooting the kid who asked for it. Turns out it was someone else's bull, who was actually on the beach. It literally looked like I picked up their bull and just kicked it away into the ocean. The look on their faces said it all.